Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl. This is going to be episode 201 of my poker vlog. For this one, I play another session at the One Eye Jacks Poker Club in Sarasota, Florida. If you have any interest in playing with me in the Orlando area, I'll be back at Orange City for the 22nd and 23rd, trying to get several hours in both those days. So if you're in the area and want to make the vlog, please feel free to come out for that one. Additionally, it's kind of funny. The last 4 videos I've made have all been losses, which my November and October have actually been extremely profitable. I think I've won every session that's not been on camera, but then just lost every time the film started rolling. Maybe I play a little bit differently for the vlog. Maybe I get in my own head a little bit when the camera's rolling. Either way, let's hope to turn it around on this video. Let's see how we do. We start out this game at the 1-3 deep stack game, waiting for the 2-5, and when a middle position player opens to $15 and the small blind calls, I'm in the big blind with Jack-8 offsuit. The razor had been pretty tight, pretty close to the GTO formula, more so than the average live player. So we're definitely taking that into account, but given the discount, having a playable hand, we're going to complete here from the big blind. When the flop comes 8-8-5 with 2 spades, we are rewarded for our somewhat loose defend. When I check it in flow, the pre-flop aggressor bets $30 and it folds back to me. On this one, we're not going to take the passive route, not going to wait for a bad turn card to come. We're going to raise our 3 of a kind right now and announce our hand strength. We bet $75. I think that even this sizing gets a lot of his Ace X that just c-betting to fold. All his overpairs are going to continue, as well as his flush draws for this sizing. So we built the pot a little bit. He calls, and we see the 4 of spades on the river. Whether we call and play passive or raise and play aggressive, we seem to get a disastrous turn card regardless. Flush completes, as well as the only straight draw of 6-7. Don't think that one's too likely, but if my opponent had an overpair or some of his sticky ace X's, they're definitely folding on this turn. I'm not slowing down, even though it's a dicey turn card. I have the jack of spades as a blocker to a made flush, as well as a jack high flush draw myself. So we're going to continue for $135. Doesn't take too long for my opponent to call, so I'm hoping for just a blank river card, and then I could c-bet against any pocket pair. But of course, the river is the 10 of spades. What a fun run out. I could actually consider betting here again. I do have the jack high flush, and my opponent might have sticky over pairs with no spade, maybe pocket 9s with a spade, 7s and 6s, things such as that. Maybe he has ace 8 with no spades and he's just unwilling to fold to this one. As played, I decided to check this one in the moment. My hand is strong enough to call a bet, but if I bet and get raised, I'm in such a gross spot. So I check, and my opponent bets really small, 125. For this sizing, I think I'm just totally priced in. I have the jack high flush. Maybe he's value betting a worse flush. Maybe he's value betting an 8. Additionally, this opponent in particular had been caught bluffing rivers on boards that are very hard to bluff on. So somewhat respectful. I think he's capable of having a bluff on this board as well. We're going to put in the 125 and see what he has. And he has pocket kings with the king of spades. Always seem to run poorly with these gross runouts when I'm making big hands the last few weeks. But if pocket kings doesn't work, let's try jack 10 of hearts. With a button straddle, I'm in late position. I raised to $25. Button and the limper call, so I'm going 3 ways to a flop of 9-4 deuce with 2 hearts. All right, we flopped a flush draw. We have to complete it, right? But 9-high boards do not really connect with my opening range all too often. I do have 2 overs and a flush draw, so I'm never folding, but I think this board is better for my opponents. So I'm going to check this one and see what my opponents want to do. And the button decides to check it back. The turn gives us the 8 of spades. Now we're open-ended, flush draw, 2 overs. All right, we're going to bet small here, try to build the pot because we couldn't possibly miss 17 outs to a nutted hand or 21 to a top pair. So I bet $35 and the button decides to fold, but the early position limper decides to call. So we are heads up to a river card, which is the 9 of spades. So we brick everything. In general, the hands that you bluff the turn with often don't make sense to bluff river with, because right now I want my opponent to have jack 10 or 2 hearts. But in this hand specifically, my opponent had an open betting lead on the turn and chose not to take it. I think this discounts him from having a 9 a lot of the time, but me, if I have jack 10, I could easily have jack 9, go for a check call flop, but then go for a value bet when no one bets on the turn, making me have trips a lot more likely than my opponent, I think. Additionally, it would be terrible if our opponent had like queen 10 for a gutter, ace high hearts for just nut flush draw that did not complete. There are some auto folds here that I think we have to try to target with a $75 bet. And for this one, we get it through. So we can't win with trips, but can win with jack high. Poker is an interesting game. Moving to our more optimal seat, I like to have pocket queens in the +1 position. With under the gun limp, I raised to $20. I don't want to go too big. I definitely want this to go post flop, get some action. Don't really want to just take up dead money and not see multiple betting streets. But when I make it $20, the big blind decides to call and the limper decides to call again. So we're 3 ways to a flop, hoping to not see an overcard, but there is a king in the window. Luckily for me, it's followed by a queen and a 6 all offsuit. This is amazing. When it checks to me, I'm never checking on this one. Hopefully my opponents have a random king, jack 10, ace jack. So many hands to get value from. I bet $20. Small bet here, trying to keep my opponent's entire ranges in there. Would love even like pocket 8s and 7s to be able to continue for this sizing. But to this bet, the big blind raises to $75. When the other player folds and it's back to me, normally I would just call here.
Fuck it, I choose violence today.
But I'm just so tired of having just terrible runouts. I'm trying to put as much money in while I have the best hand as possible. My opponent just calling can almost never have pocket kings. But if he has pocket 6s, we're trying to get the max right now. Additionally, hands like jack 10 and ace jack, we don't want them to name their own price. Any king feeling good enough to raise probably will not fold to a min click, so I make it 170. Click it back at him. Doesn't take too long for my opponent to make the call. Looking for a safe turn card just one single time. All right, 4 of clubs. That one's pretty safe, doesn't change anything. I should still have the best hand always. But my opponent is undeterred that I 3-bet the flop because he just lead jams on the turn. We snap call because we should have the best hand here always. Hopefully he does have pocket 6s. He asked me if I want to go once or twice. I am always a 2 times kind of guy. Leads me to believe he does have 10 jack, maybe 10 jack of clubs. So we're going to see 2 river cards. First one, 9 of hearts. 10 jack gets there.
This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
Second one, deuce of clubs. Clubs get there.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
So I will never get a safe run out ever. My opponent has king jack of clubs. We are chopping this. Man, 2 times today, a flopped 3 of a kind gets runner flush to beat me. Seems like it's not my day. But we win a small one once we move to the 2-5 table before the next hand of note. I'm in the cutoff with 9-7 of diamonds. With an under the gun straddle, the hijack raised to 35. I call, the button calls, and the straddler calls. We end up going 4 ways to a flop, which is 7-4-4 rainbow. When the pre-flop aggressor checks and the straddler checks, it's on me. I'm not going to let this go for free. There's tons of overcards that would make my hand very vulnerable. We likely have the best hand, but this simple pair of 7s and 4s could definitely use some protection, so I bet $60. Only the button calls, which is the only player with position on me, less than ideal. But the other players fold, so we're heads up to a turn card, which is the 9 of hearts. Kind of a fun turn card. We now beat hands like ace 7, still beating 5-6, which might call another bet. But we are still losing to any random 4 and pocket 10s, pocket jacks, all of which are possible. You're on the button, 3 $35 bets onto you. You can call it a pretty wide range. But hoping my opponent just has a very strong 7 that they're just unwilling to fold. We're going to bet again, but this time I don't think we need to bet too big. We're trying to get second pair to calls to this point. So I bet $85. My opponent doesn't take too long before calling again, so somewhat worrying until the river is the 7 of spades.
I think it's safe to say that our luck has officially turned around, guys. We are back, baby. We are fucking back. We're back.
So now it's our turn to go runner, but for us it's runner, full house. At this point, we're absolutely praying our opponent has a random 7. We're praying to have a random 4. We're going to get total stacks, and we got like $1,200 deep here, so we're going to bet $250. I think this sizing still gives my opponent plenty of room to raise with a 4, raise with a 7. If my opponent does have a hand like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, they're probably going to pay off this sizing, especially because I think a random 4 is kind of hard to bet all 3 streets if that's what I had. So if my hand doesn't make a whole lot of sense, happens to go runner, full house, that means we get to bet big. And after about 30-45 seconds, my opponent does make the call and has pocket 8. So they were ahead on the flop, we turn them head, and I guess the river was enough to confuse them into calling a large bet, which we will happily take. Stack's looking pretty good now. We're in for 1,500 and we win another small pot before we look down at ace queen of clubs in the under the gun spot. We raise to $20 and the button makes it $58. Literally saying that this was all his profit, and if he plays the hand any further, he's into the red. Not that I needed more incentive to 4-bet ace queen suited, but the fact that I don't think my opponent's going to be very interested in putting a lot of money in there just adds to the enticement of this hand. So I'm making $160, and he quickly folds. So I guess he was just messing around with this 3-bet. Either way, we will happily take dead money. On the next interesting hand, I look down at 9-10 of spades from the big blind. The hijack raised to $25, folds to me. 9-10 suited is going to be a defend. We are heads up to a flop which comes jack 8 deuce with 2 clubs, 1 spade. Open-ended flush draw of the backdoor variety seems pretty good. I check and my opponent bets $30. I actually considered raising right here. I think this board is better for my range. My opponent could easily just have like ace X and not really want to face a raise and a lot of aggression from someone. Well, we're definitely deep stacked, but this opponent had been pretty tight. He's not really the c-bet in position type. I think he actually has a made hand here more often than not. So thinking he just has a jack, he's not going to fold all too often. I'm going to just make the call here. Maybe put some aggression in if I hit a spade, but the turn is the ace of hearts. When I check it to my opponent, he checks it back. All right, he almost never has an ace here. I think an ace always bets here if they're just c-betting with an ace and then turn top pair. But when he checks it back, the river is the 10 of hearts. I think my opponent's pretty weighted towards a jack here, and we want to make sure that hand doesn't get to just go check, check. Yes, we rivered some showdown value, but we don't really think it's good. That's going to lead me to want to bluff here. I bet $85, trying to make it look like the sizing I would take if I had a random ace here. And after not too long of a take, my opponent makes the call. I show just saying you're good because there's no way I'm good here. And he has pocket kings. So I was right. He did not have a pair of aces and somewhat of a dicey turn card, but he finds the call here and gets the win. This brings us to a final hand of note. I look down at pocket jacks in the low jack with an under the gun straddle. A middle position player raises to $35. I'm going to make it $100 from the low jack. Definitely want to 3-bet this one. Hand is way too strong to call. Don't want to see it multi-way. All that jazz. And on this hand, the big blind decides to cold call. Everyone else folds. Kind of unusual. Can we see a safe flop one time? It's queen 7-7. 2 hearts. So there's always an overcard. Jacks, it's a little more reasonable than like kings, but when it checks to me, I'm going to play my entire range the same way. If I had pocket aces, pocket kings, ace queen here, I would bet a little over half pot, so I'm not going to shy away with jacks here. I bet $110. My opponent doesn't take too long before making the call. Not too happy to see that, but I think some players would definitely be sticky with like 8s and 9s and 10s. There are a few hands that I'm beating, so we are heads up to a turn card, which is the 9 of spades. Not great as pocket 9s now beat us, but I think my opponent has a lot of ace-x of hearts, as well as maybe like queen jack, queen 10 suited that are definitely calling a flop bet, but are going to be tough to hang on this turn. So I load up and fire $175 in the middle, trying to rep the overpairs, the ace queens, the hands that should be good here most of the time. My opponent does not look very happy. He's going back and forth. He actually has the 175 in his hand for a long time. And I'm hoping that if he calls, it isn't one of those weird times where I just get led into on the river and have to take a weird decision. But in the end, he will fold on this street and we'll take it down. Jack's not even top pair, but we get this one through, which will round out our night. We are into the game for $1,500. Out of the game for $2,404. Which is a profit of $904 across 3.5 hours, which equates to $260 an hour or 51 big blinds an hour. Yeah, happy to finally get that monkey off my back, man. The vlogged sessions have not been going my way as of recently. I think winning videos are more entertaining than losing ones. Unless you get buried to the point where it's comical how much money someone's lost. Just losing a few $100s is not the most vlog-worthy experience in my opinion, but thankfully for me, the biggest hand, the 7-9 suited, we get 3 streets of value with a $250 river bet. Biggest bet made by anyone all day, goes my way. Leads to a winning session, very happy about that. If you have made it all the way to this point, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a great deal. I would appreciate it, and I will see you on the next one.